I'm so glad you're interested in Geneva College history. I'm really interested in Geneva College history, so I'd like to share it. I am privileged to focus my talk to you today on a very special building on the Geneva College campus. Our first and most identifiable building, what we have called Old Main for decades, but was originally known simply as the college building. I don't think it's special. Old Main has a fascinating history, and I'm delighted to be able to share some snippets of it. As I was preparing for this talk, it occurred to me that Old Main has at least one distinction that no other building on campus has. Every Geneva student since the college moved to Beaver Falls from Northwood in 1880 has had a strong connection with Old Main, whether it be through classrooms, in the library, literary society and club meetings, chapels and performances, visits to the registrar, business office, mailboxes, campus store, lounges, and or all of the above. For well over 100 years, this building has been a part of the Geneva College experience for every student who spent time on this campus. As a commuting student in the early 1980s, the basement of Old Main was my home away from home. And to this day, every time I enter that building, I am transported back to the days spent in the ladies' lounge in the basement, where I shared great times with my fellow commuters and custodial staff. We studied there, we had parties there, we napped there, we even agonized over the Thornbirds together. Sadly, the ladies' lounge that I knew was reduced to just a restroom some years back to make room for storage and offices. But it lives on in my photos and memories, and is one of the most special places from my college years. You have all likely heard of the gift of land and money that was given to Geneva College by the Harmony Society, enabling the move of the college from Northwood, Ohio to Beaver Falls. A committee appointed by the RP Synod met on the property on July 31st, 1879. This grapevine, about a mile long, which you actually see it on the wall up there, was used on that occasion by Dr. David Matheny and others for roughly measuring out the proposed site for the college building. On November 17th of that year, articles of agreement were signed by the trustees of the RP Synod and the original contractor, W.C. McGowan. The architect for the building was James P. Bailey. Dr. David M. Carson wrote in his history of Geneva College, after considering several architects, the committee chose James P. Bailey of Pittsburgh, who submitted this design for the new college building. He later designed the Butler County Courthouse in Butler, PA, and the First Presbyterian Church in Beaver. Careful thought and prayer by the leaders of the college and denomination were put into the plans for the new college building. The January 15, 1880 issue of Our Banner, a Reformed Presbyterian publication, reported the following: every step thus far has been taken with the most careful deliberation, and after earnest prayer to Him whose direction and blessing alone can give success. At length, on one of the most magnificent sites ever chosen for a college building, a massive, substantial, and commodious stone structure is well underway. The plan of the building is such an admirable one, giving ample room, superior accommodations of every kind, and strength and elegance of construction. As this college building is to be for the use of the church for many generations, it is wise to make it now, at the first, as nearly as possible, just what it ought to be. With the plan that has been adopted, carried out, it is safe to say that very few institutions west of the Allegheny Mountains will offer to students so attractive a college building. We have proclaimed to the country that we need to have a college. We have chosen a most conspicuous situation and in full view of one of the great trunk lines of travel from the east to the west. We are setting our college building on a hill. Neither its success nor its failure can be hidden. We are to have an institution worthy of the building being erected for it, then we must work with our might for this end. As an aside, I wish that I could put up on the screen the photos of the construction that I've made, but I have yet to come across a single one. I have never seen any photos of the construction of the North Hall Dormitory, which was the second building on campus, built in 1887, nor have I seen photos of the construction of Ferncliff, built in 1880, and not yet a part of campus. The earliest campus construction photos are from 1896, with the building of the original Science Hall. It would be a real treasure to find pictures of the construction of any of these buildings, but especially so of Old Main. The work on the building was begun early in December of 1879 and carried on most of the winter. The basement was completed and about one half of the first story built when a difficulty arose, growing out of the financial embarrassments of the contractor for the stone and brickwork. William Pierce, an elder of the First Beaver Falls congregation, was persuaded to superintend construction. William Pierce had just finished building Ferncliff for the McCarthy's, and his great-grandson, David Saxton, said, "I would speculate that William Pierce was finishing up the McCarthy job when the first contractor went bankrupt, and being on site, moved his screw onto the Old Main project." Pierce rescued the building committee from financial straits and completed the building. His son, M. Pierce, served as the 13th president of Geneva. Interestingly, Pierce and his craftsmen built massive black walnut cabinets in each classroom of Old Main. These cabinets were removed during the subsequent remodel because they had outlived their utility. But Kenneth Saxton, class of 1930, son-in-law of President Pierce and the Geneva English professor, rescued the bottom of one of these cabinets from a burning dump heap outside Old Main and put a marble top on it. It served his family as a credenza and made its way to California when they moved. And that's an artifact I would love to see. Another item of interest, around the time that Old Main was being erected, there were only 12 buildings and 7 stables on the college hill. Ferncliff was one of the first 2 houses built on the hill, the other one being the home of Geneva's 8th president, both of which were completed in 1880, before Old Main. The George home, later known as Wiley House after the college purchased it, stood across College Avenue from Old Main for over 100 years. Dr. Henry Hossick George was the last president of Geneva College in Northwood, Ohio, and the first president of Geneva College in Beaver Falls. How fitting then that this afternoon there will be a groundbreaking ceremony for the building of Geneva College's new Wellesley Center on the very place where President George's home stood. The minutes of RPK from the summer of 1880 record the following. The building is to be a stone structure with brick partitions 3 stories high and having a good basement. The main building is 102 by 70 feet, with an extension back from the center is 38 by 52 feet, making the building the shape of a T. It contains 11 recitation rooms, 3 very fine society halls, a large meeting room and library, and a chapel capable of seating 700 or 800. It is provided with gas pipes, and the plumbing arrangements are complete. Water being supplied from a large tank in the upper part of the building, fed from the roof. That tank is still there today, seen. In closing our report, we can only add that we have seen unmistakable evidence of the hand of God on these, and His counsel guiding us in the profound sense of his goodness, we desire to set up this memorial. Hitherto, the Lord hath helped us. Old Main was built of native gray sandstone. President Pierce related that there was a wonderful quarry just over the hill, from which they secured the stone to build the college building. According to another source, the stone was obtained from the hill upon which the Student Center now rests. The builders didn't have to go far, there's lots. According to Mr. Charles Adada, former Vice President for Development, there are some walls in Old Main 3 feet thick to guarantee added support. A ventilation system, which can still be seen in some parts of the building, was installed to act, much like an air conditioner. He also stated that several steel beams act as the backbone of the structure. The original cost of the building was to be $20,000, but due to a rise in the cost of material and labor, and the delay of nearly a year due to the failure of the original contractor, the final cost was closer to $35,000. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? The last class to graduate from Northwood was the class of 1880, when Geneva College moved to Beaver Falls that summer. The main building was not yet completed for use in fall of '80, so classes were held in a church downtown that first year. By November, the masonry work was completed, and by April of 1881, the building was on the roof, ready for the plastering and interior carpentry. On May 26, 1881, following a picnic and music by a hired band, graduation exercises were held in a grove of oaks and pines east of the construction site, in the area of the present-day Johnston Gym. Reverend J.R.W. Sloan of Allegheny City gave an address entitled Dedication of Geneva College, saying, "Today we feel that we have been providentially directed and providentially favored. We set up our stone of remembrance and inscribe it, hitherto the Lord hath helped us." And here are repeating the words. Classes were held in the college building for the first time in September of 1881, and the first commencement was to be held in Old Main the next year, on May 23rd, 1882. Changes to the building were deemed necessary almost right away, and furnishings were slowly added with monies raised from various Sabbath school groups and others. In November 1881, a fence was erected around the perimeter of the building to keep neighbors' cows from wandering in. In December, the halls were festooned. Heating became a continuing problem early on, and the water tank in the attic had a habit of leaking and ruining the plaster. There were no seats in the chapel for the first year. In January of 1882, the cabinet reported, "A beautiful window frame has been put in the circular window in the front of the college. Glass has not been put in yet. Now here is a chance for some class to make itself illustrious by putting stained glass in this window." I don't know if there ever was stained glass in there, but it was fascinating to study pictures and see the different look of the circular window. Some years there was nothing there but a sheet of wood. In 1910, there was a very ornate letter G. There have been various renditions of the college seal in the window, including a now discarded one from approximately the 1970s that is currently inside the attic of Old Main. At one time, I had hopes of having that brought to archives and a tabletop or something made out of it. It was too large to get out of the attic. And some very creative pranksters, as you can see, managed to put a smiley face in the window for homecoming 1990. In November of 1883, the long-anticipated college bell arrived and was mounted in the belfry. Mr. Carl S. Zimmerman, campanologist of TowerBells.org, believes the bell was cast by the Fulton Bell Foundry of Pittsburgh. The bell, procured at a cost of $500, has a cast steel tongue and was originally hung to swing from east to west. After trying it out for a time, it was raised 1 foot and remounted to swing north and south. The bells were rung at 6 a.m. for 5 minutes to wake the students in the nearby boarding houses. At 8 a.m. for chapel, and throughout the day for classes until the 1950s. I wanted to take the opportunity to show you some wonderful photos of the early years of the college, and you can see some more of the changes that took place over the years. The photo on the left was taken in 1890 by Henry George, whose father was the president. As I said previously, they lived across College Avenue from Old Main, and perhaps this photo was taken from their front porch. In 1907, Henry would himself become the president of Geneva College. The photo on the right, from approximately the same time, shows young men in the dress of the day, top hats and all, alongside the fence. The west front of the college building once boasted turnstiles as well as a fence to keep those cows out, and a drinking fountain to keep the students hydrated. The grounds at that time were beautifully cared for by smiling Jimmy McCartney, brother of Professor John McCartney. In 1897, College Avenue was paved with bricks. Back in the early days, Old Main, College on the Hill, was very visible from the town below and from Eastvale across the river. It's not quite as visible these days. Geneva's young president, Henry George, who was only 29 years old in 1907 when he took the office, loved to sit on the south-facing steps of the building and view the valley below. The center photo shows some students leaving the west doors, approaching the flagstone sidewalk. In 1913, when that photo was taken, the wood above the outside doors around the building had just been replaced with glass. Just for fun, there's a picture from 1924 with students in the yard of the building. I'm not sure what the event was, but it looks like some kind of a car rally. Many changes have come to Old Main in the course of the 143 years on the hill, but thankfully, not many have come through forces of nature. As early as September of 1881, forest fires raged fiercely in the vicinity of our college. At one point, it was thought that the elegant and massive structure known as College Station, just below campus, would be destroyed, but the flames were stayed before such destruction could befall the building. In February 1887, the cabinet reported a high wind on the 11th blew the tin roofing from the whole of the north wing of the college. In an article written in 1981 for the cabinet, student Calvin Trout reported that a tornado took the roof off the building again in 1892. However, the most famous incident occurred on May 11, 1914, as reported by the cabinet. The storm had centered around the College Hill area early in the morning, and as its force hit Old Main, part of the northwest corner of the roof broke off. The massive roof was carried across the campus by the wind and landed near the present Park Place, which would now be the far side of Northbrook Hall. Dr. Robert Clark, assistant to the president, recalled that after the storm, he and Dr. Caldwell walked to the place on campus where the section of roof had landed. They discovered that an unevenly broken rafter from the section was sticking into the ground. After pulling it out to see how long the rafter was, they found that the wind had forced it nearly 5 feet into the ground. This storm had a disastrous effect on the Geneva campus, which then included only 3 buildings: Old Main, Science Hall, and the dormitory building, located between Old Main and where we are right now, the library. You can see the dormitory in the background of this photo. See the chimneys of it. A remodeling project in progress at that time in Old Main was completely wrecked by the rain, which poured into the building. Following the storm, 1 foot of water lay in front of the platform in the college chapel. The destructive effects of the storm were a reason for the complete remodeling of the college chapel, a project supported by Dr. Clark. While a temporary roof covering permitted regular classes to be held, architects planned a new chapel. What seemed like a calamity at the time was turned into a huge blessing. In God's providence, He used a tornado to provide a newly refurbished and greatly improved chapel, dedicated less than a year later. A few years later, on March 29, 1919, a fire broke out in the southeast corner of the beautiful Old Main and caused a great deal of comment and supposition as to its origin. No definite reason could be given. The most probable cause was perhaps a spark from the furnace blown by the high northwest wind. The story spread by a little girl that a sparrow had carried a lighted cigarette into its nest in the cornice found hearty support among the firemen and many of the spectators. The ceiling of the Aletheorium Literary Hall was slightly damaged. According to Christian Nation, prompt and efficient work on the part of students and janitors saved Geneva College from a disastrous fire in the main college building on Saturday, March 29th. Prompt and wise use of the hose had the fire under control when the city fire department arrived on the scene and brought words of commendation from the fire chief. Had the flames gotten headway with the high wind blowing, it would have been very difficult to save the building. The loss is very small and covered by insurance. The origin of the fire is a mystery, as there was nothing in that part of the building to cause fire. I'm sure that the Geneva community of that day was extremely thankful to the Lord for sparing the building as we can also. Another major tornado wreaked havoc on the Beaver Valley on May 31st, 1985, coming within a mile of the campus. But once again, the Lord spared Geneva College from damage. Keeping track of the changes and renovations to Old Main over the 143 years since classes first began meeting in the building would be a full-time job. And if I even tried to tell you about just the ones that I'm aware of, we would be here throughout the weekend. So I've chosen just a few others to talk to you about. If you look at the early photos of Old Main, you will clearly see a pinnacle, sometimes called a finial, on each corner of the roof. These were in place until the early 1940s. Another change to the view of the building occurred in the summer of 1943 when Old Main got a new cupola. The editor of the Alumnus wrote about the new look. Notice that the louvers are on. If you feel the urge to tie your class colors to the steeple, now you will need a longer ladder. This department is not going to stick its neck out by expressing an opinion as to whether banishing the louvers was an improvement or not, but we were sorry to see them go. No doubt they had to go with the minarets that formerly crowned the towers. I was amazed to learn recently that in the summer of 1946, the door at the east end of the main lobby was opened for the first time in the history of the building, and stairs constructed at this exit. Previous to that, I guess it was a doorway to nowhere. Speaking of stairs, the fall of 1960 brought major changes in the way the college community got to the upper floors of Old Main. The construction of 2 fireproof stairwells in Old Main was mandated by the Pennsylvania Department of Labor and Industry for fire safety. These stairwells were constructed at the north and south sections, the longest dimensions of the building. A stone wing to accommodate one stairwell was constructed on the north side. In this slide, you can see students on the original interior staircases that led from the first floor lobby to the second floor, as well as stairs going from the first floor to the student lounge in the basement. This slide shows recent photos of the fireproof stairwells in the north and south of the building, as well as one of the original staircases still in place, going from the second to the third floor. Not long ago, I read something that referred to the north door of Old Main. I thought to myself, there's no north door. Well, that is true now, but up until 1960, there was one. This slide shows the stairs leading to the north door circled in red. These stairs were on the end of the building closest to McCarthy Library. These photos show the fall 1960 construction of the stone wing to enclose the new fireproof staircase on the north side of Old Main. That stone wing remains to this day. Mandating fireproof stairwells in the building also necessitated changes to the chapel, requiring that a 6-foot corridor be cut into the stage to provide access to the new stairwell behind the chapel. In this slide, you can see the stage before it's built. This is what the chapel looked like after the stairwells were put into place. The gap remained for 25 years. It's very unhandy. In the summer of 1985, the chapel was remodeled. The stage was redesigned and enlarged and rebuilt in oak. With the 1960s regulations now outmoded, the deplorable gap in the stage could finally be closed. The seats, wiring, lighting, and stage curtains were all replaced, and it was later air conditioned. This slide shows the completed renovation with the more current look of the chapel since 1985. The summer of 1985 was a very busy one for Old Main. Not only was the chapel renovated, but interior reconstruction in Old Main resulted in remodeling the lobby with lovely woodwork, new lighting, and a carpet with the seal of the college. Old Main classrooms were also revamped. Without a doubt, the most noticeable change made that summer was that Old Main's outside walls were cleaned of over 100 years of industrial smoke, soot, and grime. I'm sure that you've noticed the much darker appearance of the building in many of the older photos, so you can imagine how dramatic the difference was. A plaque showing the previous coloration with the words, "Lest ye forget, Old Main cleaned 1985, was mounted on the northeast corner of the building near the fire escape, so that future generations could see what previous generations of Genevans saw when they lived in Old Main. In May of 1989, engineers informed the college that the bell tower timbers, unshielded for the past 100 years, needed to be replaced. Scaffolding covered the front of Old Main for months. Contractors ran into many unanticipated problems, and the cost of the operation was undisclosed. Repairs made included replacement of shafts holding the bell, which had deteriorated, screens installed to keep pigeons out, new copper sheeting on the floor of the bell tower, wood and shingles on the roof replaced, painting of the windows in the bell tower, and restoration of the decorative part of the roof. That November, as part of the work begun in May, the spire on top of the building was replaced. Pictured here are several Geneva dignitaries, including Brad Fry, Stuart Lee, Harry Farr, and Chick O'Dowd, who gathered in front of Alexander Hall to watch the placing of the new spire. Dr. David Badger, a chemistry professor, thoughtfully rescued and stored a part of the original 1881 spire in his storage room in S&E. It now has its home in the archives, and it's on the table right there. I like to look at it and think of all the decades that it stood watch over Geneva's movie. The January 1991 issue of the Alumnus reported, as a result of the continued generosity of Dr. W. Clare and Melba Brown Merriman, both members of the class of 1929, the college now has a Steinway concert grand piano. The Model D has been placed in Old Main Chapel Auditorium and will be dedicated this February 24th at a special concert. To say that the piano has been placed in the chapel is kind of an understatement. Considering the great effort it took the previous October to get that beautiful instrument into the chapel. As you can see here, the piano had to be hauled up along the outside of the building and taken in through one of the classroom windows. Our time is coming to a close, but I can't end without telling you a few of the pranks that have been carried out in or on Old Main over the years. This prank from 1885 just boggles my mind. The cabinet reported that although the faculty had been expecting mischief on Saturday, October 31st, and were on the lookout, nothing happened. However, on the Monday morning following Halloween, it was discovered that jokers had been abroad. About 600 chairs, all the building contained, were on the roof of the college building. All benches were locked in the vacant room in the third story. The fire under the boilers put out, and all the water in them had escaped through an open valve. As the morning was very cold, school was necessarily of short duration. As it has taken the faculty 2 or 3 days to get the chairs down, the wonder of everyone is how so many chairs could be taken up in one night. And what I would give for a picture of those 600 chairs on the roof. You are all likely very familiar with the true story of the Cow in the Belfry in 1891. That was not the only animal to enter the halls of Old Main. In the winter of 1907, several students borrowed Tom, the delivery horse belonging to a local merchant, Mr. Pullinger. As the account goes, we entered the south door of Old Main and led Tom to the west staircase. We had some difficulty persuading the animal to ascend the stair. He pawed the bottom treads nervously. I must say that we were all a little disappointed in Tom. We had always found him a docile and dependable man, not at all given to frivolous behavior, but on this occasion, he took on something fierce. He seemed terrified, and once he got down on his knees. Halfway up, he wanted to turn around. He not only tried to sweep his head between the eyelashes of the balustrade, but he also threw one hind leg over the rail with some notion, apparently, of sliding down the banister. A Herculean effort that the Cooney boys always relied upon in such an emergency succeeded in getting the stray hoof back on the staircase. And so, by hauling him by the ears from in front and twisting his tail and pushing his rump from behind, we got him up to the landing and he tried to sit on a windowsill. Once in the chapel, the speed became even more jittery because of the slipperiness of the hardwood floor. We proceeded to the anteroom at the west end of the rostrum. The chapel was pitch dark. We got 2 sets of overalls from the basement, property of the student janitors. Put one pair on the front legs and one on the rear. Then we deposited some straw on the floor and, laughing heartily, we made our way unobtrusively to our various places of abode. When President Johnston went up to the rostrum to lead chapel next morning, he made for the west anteroom. We watched with keen attention. He disappeared through the door. Some time elapsed before he came out on the stage. He found the animal, of course, but he gave no evidence of having done so, except that his face was highly flushed. Whether he was angry or amused, I cannot say. The latter came out to me. At all events, he let us down hard. He did not tell us that he could lay his finger on the guilty parties, as he usually did on such occasions, and invite us rather coaxingly to come forward and confess. We always expected to be invited to confess. He gave us a pleasant sense of guilt, mingled with the spice of danger, together with mild electrical twinges of conscience, who they'd all added to our pleasure in the escapade and made us feel that we had been raising the devil. Dr. Johnson made no reference to his discovery then or later. Before pronouncing the benediction, he said, "At the conclusion of these exercises, I will ask the janitors to remain." You can imagine why. The following year, 1908, some of this same group of pranksters put Mr. Pullinger's delivery wagon on the roof of Old Main. They got the football field sideline road from the gymnasium and hauled it straight up the south side of the building, with its wheels against the wall, near the southwest corner. According to one of the culprits, it looked funny going up over the Adelphic Literary Hall windows. As I look back, I wonder what we should have done during our merry college days without Mr. Pullinger's hay burner and his delivery wagon. In 1952, the chapel was redecorated in the wee hours of the morning when pranksters suspended the chapel podium from the ceiling. who thinks of doing these things? We could go on for some time about the mischief perpetrated in the bell tower, various bell clapper thefts, and hundreds of signatures making up the graffiti in the tower. But suffice it to say, generations of Genevans have had a lot of fun in this building. In conclusion, I just want to share a brief article that I recently came across in the Cabinet from December of 1962. It was written by sophomore Janet Fraser and is called Good Morning, Old Main. It reads, did you ever ask yourself what Old Main means? To a student, Old Main is the place where he attends classes. To the maintenance man, it's a job. And to the administration, it's the hub in the wheel of Geneva's activities. The Old Main is more than a stone building. It's more than a place to attend classes, and it's more than a place to pick up mail. In the morning, Old Main stands in a white mist of fog with its bell tower outstretched to the sky. As you walk up the front steps, you hear the crisp crunch of leaves under your feet. When you open the door, the interior of Old Main stands before you, silent, quiet, yet warm and inviting. In the waking hours of the day, Old Main is darkness. It's empty soda bottles waiting to be picked up. It's the echo of footsteps as you walk the halls. It's the emptiness of mailboxes before the morning mail arrives. It's the hiss of warm steam as it issues from the radiators. Old Main is the persistent hum of water. Old Main is warm. It's the grayness which peers through the windows in the early morning. It's the empty desks behind the closed classroom doors and the restful feeling in the administrative offices. Old Main is reverence also, the quiet, peaceful feeling of the chapel with its stage with podium outstanding. Old Main's sign is advertising coming campus events. Its dark shadows in the partially lighted halls. It's a cool breeze when you open the window, and it's the quietness of the switchboard. It's the bookstore and the mail not out sign. But most of all, it's just Old Main. Let us not say that this is Old Main in its entirety. For Old Main means many things to many people. This is, however, what we see and hear when we wake up, Old Main. Now, obviously, a number of things have changed since Janet Fraser wrote that 60 years ago, but I venture to say that much of what she described remains the same. Old Main is many things to many people. Old Main remains a magnificent structure, built, as the Blue Banner said, with the most careful deliberation, yet after earnest prayer to Him whose direction and blessing alone be a success. Set on a hill, where neither its success nor failure can be hid. It has been protected for 143 years by the providential hand of God, used for His glory and upheld by His faithfulness. When thinking of Old Main, I can certainly say with the thankfulness of the psalmist, I remember the days of long ago. I meditate on all your works and consider what your hands have done. Thank you so much for allowing me to share some pictures and stories of Old Main with you today.